we're going to jump directly into another series which features some spicy stuff here. It's been a hot minute since we've seen Shaman be played on broadcast. And Monsanto, Hearthstone Grandmaster for the Americas, has chosen to bring a control Shaman featuring a lot of defensive cards in the top end and, Tidal Wave and Walking Fountain. And currently he's down 0-1 as we're going to be watching his, what we call Video Game Warrior going up on broadcast. And part of it is because we're not really sure what it does except stall the game for a very long time and try to steal your weapons.
I still don't understand this joke, Dan, and I don't want to, okay? Just don't explain it to me. It's fine. Monsanto's lineup, one of the wackiest in this entire field. He has 8 oozes and 8 sticky fingers, I believe, across all of his lineup. He is hard targeting Bomb Warrior in the most aggressive fashion possible. He does then also receive a little bit of splash onto like Demon Hunter, for example, where I think a lot of the ways he's built his decks also helps him to just straight up outlast the damage that Demon Hunter can output as well. So he does have some other good matchups along the way. But what his lineup has been built to do is make every Bomb Warrior player's life miserable throughout this entire tournament.
Yeah, it's really not so much about winning as it's about making your opponent really upset.
Yes.
It seems like what Monsanto is doing, as well as every Swiss tournament admin upset by playing things like Archivist Lysiana. It's definitely been some time since we've seen this deck have its time in the sun. The last time seemed to be during the Specialist meta a year ago when Grandmasters first began as a program. So here we go. Game.
I think you and TJ certainly bore the brunt of the Lysiana Bomb Warrior mirrors in the Americas region many back when. So I imagine you're an absolute expert in a Lysiana Control Warrior, right, Dan?
That's right. Casting that really puts hair on your chest. So it brings back some good memories from Grandmaster Season 1 of 2019. The card I think I'm really intrigued by is the Bulwark of Azeroth. That card... I've watched Admirable try to play that card a lot. I think it's his favorite card in Warrior. And I just saw a lot of situations where this card seemed to be very underwhelming, to say the least. In certain situations, though, it seemed to be really fun, especially if you're able to do really wacky things like upgrade it and whatnot. But I'm not expecting huge things from that card, even though it's very flashy, as Monsanto has a golden copy of it in his deck.
Yes. I guess we've talked about Monsanto's strategy in general, so we should kind of break down how that lines up into jrsConley or jrsConley? Not sure. We'll go with JRS. Because he does not actually have Bomb Warrior in his lineup. He has a Pain Warrior instead, an Egg Warrior. He does have the Demon Hunter, though, which, as I mentioned, a lot of this tech can splash onto Demon Hunter as well. A lot of weapon destruction, a lot of healing, in like the Control Shaman, for example, as well as Bulwark of Azeroth is something that can prevent the big burst turns from the Demon Hunter. But outside of that, his lineup is fairly aggressive, which is what you would theorize maybe Monsanto has a little bit of a weakness to when he has so many tech cards and so much greed built into his decks overall.
Yep, that does make sense here, as Conley is a player that has loved Rogue for quite some time, and is one of the decks that I've seen their name pop up on top deck lists, for example, largely piloted by Rogue. So I do expect him to feel very proficient on this deck. We're coming into game number 3. Still a little bit of lack of context whether or not he won, or rather he lost with his Rogue deck at all. But against the Warrior deck, Rogue has traditionally struggled against their Control Warrior game plan because of how effective they are at removing stuff. It does feel extra weird when there's like, so much weapon removal in Monsanto's hand even right now. That I'm not really sure what to make of it, other than Monsanto can just simply use Bulwark here to remove some of the threats on the board here.
Yeah, he could choose to just use it aggressively. He could also choose to drop a Shield Slam. He could also choose to just use up a Skipper. There's actually a lot of ways that he could go about doing this. Rush Lackey gives him a lot of nice solutions here as well. But he might want to hold on to full Skipper value even. But yes, this is a weapon-based build of Rogue that Conley is running with a Hook Scimitar double Self-Sharpening Sword. And Monsanto just already has the triple weapon destruction lined up and ready to go.
That's right. And so, wow, Conley playing light speed. What is it about rogue players and wanting to play fast all the time? It's so interesting to me.
It does make sense
just...
if you think about it, though, right? Because people who've been playing Rogue for a long time will have gone through like all the Miracle Rogue iterations, where if you're throwing around 6, 7, 8, 9 cards in a single turn. So I think it would tend to build up that kind of play style. It makes sense to me, at least.
Yeah, I just think about some other notoriously quick players like Casey, for example, who also kind of grew up in the ladder and tournament scene, being a rogue expert for so many years, and it just seems like their MO, right? Rogue players that love to just dump their hand quickly. Speaking of dumping the hand, Conley going for a secret passage right now just to see if his hand can improve, because it was pretty awkward.
Okay, one
finds some okay mage spells. Nothing super duper impactful, but the arcane missiles is playable. Kind of wonder if he wants to play a self-sharpening sword. This is a card that people really tried to experiment with a lot at the beginning of the set, and I just felt like it was a little bit clunky because it took a while to ramp up, and you could just kill him way faster than having 4 turns of build-up. And, while I do enjoy the foreplay, I just kind of want to get straight to it sometimes when I'm playing Rogue.
I mean, a little bit too much information, Dan. I will quickly divert to how funny the second Kobold Sticky Finger is on the self-sharpening sword. Because I think, to give you a genuine answer, I was going to pose the question, right? Do you actually invest all of your mana into this self-sharpening sword off the passage this turn? Because he had the option. The other option was a very mediocre Steel Dancer without actually having a weapon equipped. But he just saw Kobold Sticky Finger #1 come down, right? So I think he probably feels like, well, if I get oozed here, fine. My opponent's playing quad weapon destruction in his deck. I'm probably going to get my weapons destroyed. But I'm probably not going to get it stolen because I just saw that one Sticky Finger come down into play. But no, you are wrong. The worst possible thing has happened. And now Monsanto, with his ridiculously slow control deck, is just threatening lethal against Conley just with that self-sharpening sword and the minions he has in play.
That's right. Although this is a nice Van Cleef setup for Conley. I mean, it's 10-10. It's got something going here. Monsanto could remove it. Maybe? I don't know. Bladestorm does make it a little bit awkward with that stealth minion on the board.
Yeah. Which is actually a really heads-up spot from Conley as well, just to leave it there as play as a 3-1, just to play it at the start of the turn to make sure it was there. Looks like Monsanto's just going to rip the fitty-fitty.
Oh my goodness.
Huge.
The golden Van Cleef.
You're just going to smack him? Of course you're not. You haven't come to this tournament with this lineup to kill people with self-sharpening swords, have you, Monsanto? I know what's up.
Not yet. Not yet. He came to finish the job with the Bulwark.
Exactly.
Actually.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. All this weapon synergy and no weapons. I guess you do have your hero power, but it's just so suboptimal. Picked up Polymorph. That probably goes to tell you where Conley feels like his role right now in the matchup.
Wait. Picked Polymorph? I'm so confused.
Let's see here. So from Monsanto's Warrior deck list, at the top end, he's going to be playing Deathwing and Archivist Elysiana and Cartoot Defender.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what he feels like he needs to stop, but
really needs to poly Deathwing mad aspects. Because I looked it up to double check as well that there was no Rattlegore in here, right? Because that would be a reason to take Polymorph if your opponent was playing Rattlegore in their deck potentially. You can sap it, sure, but eventually you'll have to start dealing with it. Feels like Deathwing is a card that you can take down. I don't know.
well, Monsanto is picking up more removal tools, so it looks like we're going to be in that stage where Monsanto just kind of keeps removing things from Conley, not really extending the game plan to win anytime soon, but also stop Conley from ever developing anything onto the board.
Yeah. Just gonna use up Shield Slam here. I like this. I think multiple casters, myself included, have been banging the drum for a few weeks here about using Shield Slams a little bit more liberally. There's enough aggressive decks right now that are just really good at keeping your armor trimmed down, and we've seen multiple positions across all regions where players have got a little bit stuck with a Shield Slam in their hand that they've had options for previous turns.
More like a wisp than a
That's right.
Nice.
Okay. So, summons a imprisoned minion that's going to come into a couple of turns. Reasonable for a 1-drop, right? So it still has decent stats. But still, very awkward for Conley. Doesn't have like Dr. Krasnov to attack into minions. Dread Corsair is too expensive.
Monsanto rips the Corsair cache just to see what will happen.
Yes, to test for counterspell.
Yes, exactly. He knows that's the dead card. He actually had the option on the previous turn. Like, he floated so much mana, he could have just, like, dumped it from his hand, but saw no reason to, and then got rewarded by being able to use it there to test against mage spells, which I imagine is exactly something that he had in mind. Good chance that you do see some mage secrets now playing against Rogue, because Hearthstone is silly.
Hard to disagree with that. Monsanto just clearing off the board here, and you know, so he's tested for counterspell, he's tested for spellbender. Now we enter the phase where if he plays minions, it's going to get copied, or if he attacks face, is there going to be anything else? Chooses to hold, which I think I agree with. There's no incentive for Monsanto to have to prioritize using some of his removal on a 1-2. Deadly poison, okay.
May I have this dance?
So I guess we'll see the Steel Dancer summoned a 3-cost minion. Ends up just being generic weaponized Wasp 3/3. Conley again, kind of just in this holding pattern. We see him slowly losing ground because the health change actually the health total hasn't changed much. Monsanto's actually been in the high 20s to like 30 life almost since the beginning of this this push here from Conley with all these small minions.
Agreed.
And yet he's almost out of resources.
He is, but I do feel like he's playing it the right way at least. Like there's no point for him really just to go all in on damage right now, which is actually starting to make me come around to the polymorph a little bit more. Like maybe it's just Cartoon Defender he's just looking to deal with. Because I think he's trying to just stick one board and end the game in one big swing here. Because he knows he can't deal enough damage in straight up burst when all of his weapons are just consistently getting destroyed, right? So I think just slowly building board here and then being able to polymorph through a Cartoon Defender if it comes down. I think I actually was too quick to judge on that pick. I think Conley might have just been 3 steps ahead of me on where his game plan was here.
That's true. I don't even remember necessarily the other cards that he had as an option that were like legitimately good.
There was a Frostbolt being offered, which is where my head was at, because
right.
I hadn't like retuned off damage at that point, which I think I absolutely should have done, and Conley definitely had.
Yeah, I mean, this is a meaningful offensive now from Conley. It looks like it's a very well-crafted last push, so to speak, because he doesn't really have much more after this.
And this is it,
Impressive
right? Like,
stuff
sap
from
it once, if it comes down again, boom, polymorph, no way. You just absolutely do not get to play with this Cartoon Defender to save your life.
And Monsanto doesn't have the kind of board clear that he's looking for. Bladestorm is at its weakest specifically in this spot when there's so many minions on the board, all different kind of health totals. Can clear off a couple of them, though, with Bladestorm and Risky Skipper.
Mm-hmm.
It'll clear off almost all of them, actually, except for the highest health one. So it looks like the Steel Dancer and I think the Wasp are never surviving as well.
He's got to be considering lines with the Bulwark as well. Like, can he clear enough so Bulwark keeps him alive for a turn? So obviously, if with the amount of minions that are alive right now, it doesn't protect him because Conley can just use all the small attacks first and then use the big attacks once the weapon is broken.
Right, and he's not expecting that polymorph, which ends up just being the right pick. This is so brilliant here. Unless I'm missing something.
Nope, you are not.
Push. I'm like, wait, what? Taking a second to register it. Conley wins from a comeback behind victory in game number 3. It looked like Monsanto was in full control with a weapon-based rogue and 3 weapon destruction. Monsanto, which of course he's played all 3 of them. It looked like Monsanto was in full control, but like this is actually going back to one of the most important things in Hearthstone, which is you have to have actually a game plan to win a lot of the times. It's rare when a deck can succeed by doing nothing and hoping that their opponent eventually runs out of resources. We're actually kind of so far past that point, especially with the amount of card generation in the game, that doesn't feel like a very reliable course that you can take. And Monsanto kind of showed you why that is. It's a good idea from Monsanto, but it just kind of fell short. And Conley, of course, played very tight. And you can see why he's considered a rogue expert.
Yeah, honestly, my first exposure to watching him play, but was pretty impressed with the way he played that out. I think he adjusted his expectations much quicker than I did as an onlooker as to how he was going to win the game, and played to it appropriately. But if you thought we were at the end of the anti-warrior tech, oh no. There is much more where that came from. Monsanto now looks like he is going to be moving over to his control shaman, which also plays double acidic Swampoo's, double Kobold Sticky Finger. This deck even makes room for weapon destruction number 17 in his lineup. Yes, that is how many he's playing. The one of Harrison Jones in there as well. On top of which, Monsanto just plays a Wormrest Purifier in his deck as well, which will transform any bombs that get shuffled into other cards.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure when Brian Kibler snuck into Monsanto's collection to build the deck for Masters Tour Montreal, but it does seem like it would be something you watch more on his stream than Monsanto. But at the same time, Monsanto is not a player unfamiliar with taking risks. We've seen him actually bring really wacky lineups, even dating back to the ETC playoffs, where Monsanto was first crafting his legacy that eventually put him into the upper echelons of the Americas Grandmasters. But, Conley is playing a deck that could suffer from that weapon destruction, but not nearly as impactful as you might think. I find that weapon destruction against Demon Hunter doesn't actually stop them a lot of the time. The most painful aspect about it is actually their lifesteal ability, because you can shut off like a Rocky Warblades. Yep. So like every time I play weapon destruction on their Marrow Slicer, I'm like, yes, that's the swing I'm looking for, and then I just end up losing the game anyways.
Yeah, essentially, any weapon destruction heals you for 4, basically, against Demon Hunter, right? That's what it does. It's not like the be all end all the time, but you have to look at Monsanto's lineup a little bit deeper than that. Where yes, it's built for Bomb Warrior, but I do think it's still very, very effective in this matchup because it's a bunch of weapon destruction, but it's also a bunch of healing. A bunch of removal, so he never really gets hit by minions. So that means Conley just has to keep sending weapon charges and twin slices and chaos strikes and everything else to the face. And then it also just plays like a million healing on top of that as well, with walking fountains and all that double witch's brew, all of these heal options that he has available to him as well. So it should be pretty insane.
Yep, very much so. Conley gonna just make sure there's no tempo established. I am very curious to see how this shaman crafts together a win condition as opposed to simply just removing everything. It does seem like it has a little bit more threats than the warrior deck.
Yeah.
I see.
Just a little bit, though.
But I will also say in this matchup, it doesn't really need to, right? Conley is going to draw cards, and he has a finite amount of damage in his deck. If Monsanto can survive through it, he wins on fatigue. So this is not really the matchup where he needs a win condition. He might do in some others, but I feel like this game plan will just be straight up survive the deck from Monsanto most of the time.
Yeah, he does have a lot of life gain. Doesn't have a lot of plays this turn, but that's okay. Diligent Note Taker, not super important right now. It's just it's more it's it's actually better when you get to play things like the Diligent Note Taker and then say Tidal Wave or Earthquake and get that AoE back in your hand.
Witch's Brew. Nutty.
Oh, that's right. So Conley kind of thinking about how much he wants to extend onto the board here, as he is recognizing that Monsanto probably does have AoE cards that he has to be mindful of. Choose to hold instead of developing the Spirit Jailer. What do you think, Sato?
I kind of like it, honestly. I feel like he needs to ration out his threats a little bit. Like, the more removal he can get out with smaller boards, the better chance he has of actually sticking some minions in the mid-game, and I think he absolutely does need to do that at some point. I think he's recognizing that just straight-up weapon damage and spell damage does not end this game. He needs to work on sticking a board at some point.
Right, but that also means that Monsanto can take it even slower and choose to relax and not have to worry about development. That being said, it's not like one Spirit Jailer is, the best possible tempo that you can establish with this deck. It's just a minor 1/3.
There's also downside that comes with it, right? Because he wants to probably cast Skull in 2 turns' time from when he made that decision. So there's actually downside to loading his deck up with Spirit Fragments right now, because the more that are in there, the greater chance you have of missing a discount on Skull of Gul'dan by drawing a Skull Fragment and then hitting the redraw. So he might just be looking to play Skull first and then load up the extra Skull Fragments into his deck afterwards.
Yeah, picks up a double jump, which can also draw that other Skull. Kind of running into some hand space considerations as well. If he doesn't have playable cards, then he's going to be stuck with overdrawing. If he does end up choosing to play Skull on 6, which may not even come down if he's holding too many cards that he doesn't want to throw away.
Yeah, it's not looking like a possibility any longer.
How good is this Lurker below, by the way? Doing 3 damage and repeating if it ends up killing it. Woo! Just basically doing its best Herald the Flame impression.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm fairly sure anyone who's played even a little bit of Battlegrounds is familiar with situations where you think you have a free win and then suddenly the Herald just makes a mess of you.
Demons.
Conley, again, with surprisingly awkward hand.
Yeah.
So I guess going back to what you were saying before, destroying the soul fragments does make it more organized for Conley to play Skull Gul'dan, but I guess this is just his way of answering this Lurker.
Yeah, the problem is that, like you were talking about last turn, like his hand's kind of congested and so many of his cards are situational or recycle that I don't think he has the luxury anymore. He just has to kind of dump some cards out of his hand, right? Which is why the 1/3 and 3/2 come down here. It's not like he can just randomly throw away Blade Dance, Chaos Strike would cycle, so he needs to make space in his hand so he can Skull.
Yeah, well, Monsanto plays Swamp Creek Hagatha, which teaches the Horror some spells. He could pick up Torrent, which seems good. Earthquake, Runic Carvings as well. Really powerful removal or development options. Because one thing to consider is that...
kind of interesting, right?
Ooh. It is... Although, when you play the Horror, you don't really have like a large board as Shaman, so I am intrigued by it. Let's pick up the Runic Carvings.
Okay. Okay with that.
Conley picks up Soul Fragment. He could also play double jump into a Skull Gul'dan from his deck right now.
Yeah, I think it's just the one Spectral Sight.
Oh, yeah, he does have Spectral Sight.
But I think he's already played it this game.
Alas, poor warlock.
Oh no, despite having only a few, Soul Fragment still ends up picking it up. Not discounting Blade Dance. Finds Marrow Slicer though, which is nice.
Send some damage downtown, can actually get 8 to the face now, but now Walking Fountain can just come down for the clear and just immediately pull back all that health. Monsanto wants to. That would involve leaving this weapon up for a second swing, though, if Monsanto is particularly bothered about doing that.
Yeah, I like playing the Walking Fountain. Even potentially gives you opportunities to pressure the Demon Hunter. One thing that we kind of saw just, with Conley is that, in the early game, if you end up drawing reactive cards, sometimes a Demon Hunter, if they're too far behind on the board, has to use their life to trade a lot, and sometimes that ends up being their undoing as well, because they're funneling so much power into their attack, and if they have to stabilize onto the board, if they don't have Blade Dance, they end up trading their life. But Conley does have a very good hand to deal with that. Oh, interesting. Monsanto goes with the Tidal Wave instead. Huh. What do you think about that?
It's curious to me, actually. Yeah, I liked all the things you were saying. The Walking Fountain actually developed a threat here, but maybe that is the key to it. Maybe Monsanto knows that Conley's deck plays a bunch of things like Blade Dance and Shard Shatter Mystics and so on that he actually wants to use as removal on big threats as they come down. So maybe Monsanto holds back for that exact reason, just not activating some of the cards that Conley has in his hand.
Yeah, that makes sense given that Conley's been passing with a lot of cards, right? Like Demon Hunter, while they don't mind having as many cards, it does kind of signal that they have a more reactive game plan as opposed to a proactive one. So I think that's Monsanto making that read. Also by, I think, reducing a little bit of his own board, gives Conley less value to use things like Sociologist Militia, although I think Conley has consumed most of his soul fragments by now.
He did eat a lot of them off the skull, yeah. It's very true. But nonetheless, Walking Fountain is going to come down here. Still picks up that 8 healing. He's going to trade off immediately on board. Monsanto still at an incredibly healthy 26.
Yeah, almost to the point where I feel like if I'm Conley, I'm going to also want to start prioritizing hero power on my opponent, just to make sure that I'm not cutting a lot of corners on my damage.
Yeah.
And then running out by 2 or 3.
It's very fair. Crucially, Conley is still running the Magtheridon in his deck, which is a card a lot of people have actually cut, even though it was really one of the core cards very, very early on. So that is just one huge threat that Monsanto does have to remain aware of, make sure he retains an answer for, but I'm sure his deck has absolutely no shortage of answers. And what it does.
Yeah, I mean, his deck is 29 removal cards / revealing cards and a Worm Rest Purifier.
Yes.
Wow, I mean, that's a big board that came out of nowhere. Monsanto said, guess what, I have my own Sociologist Militia. Could clear the board here, but how much does Monsanto actually want to commit versus kind of use his health as a resource? Because Monsanto, with so much healing in his deck, sometimes feels like maybe you'd be overkilling stuff, or you've had less playable cards if you don't have life that you want to heal.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I think it's something that we saw in the previous matchup as well, but personally for me against Demon Hunter, I wouldn't be worried too much about falling into that trap. Because, potentially against the rogue matchup that we just saw last time, you could get yourself into a trap where you don't use any of your health as a resource, so you're at 30, but you've played every removal card, and then we get that same situation that we saw at the end from Conley in the previous series, where he just eventually sort of grinds all the value out of his opponent's hand and sticks a board and wins the game. I just don't think that's something this deck is really capable of doing, right? They have so few threats that I think Monsanto can afford to play this game as see a threat, kill a threat every single turn, because eventually Conley's just going to run out of stuff to do.
That's right. Conley finds Twin Slice. So let's count damage here. Mirror Slicer's 4. Twin Slice is another 4. Is another Twin Slice, so that's 12. Kane is another 3, so that's 15. I mean, that's more than Monsanto's half of his life right now, so he could find a way to push here. And he's going to just go ahead and Blade Dance and clear up some of this board as well, which I think is smart.
Yeah, I do like that.
Oh, even getting the Consume Magic in. Very nice to get that extra draw. down to just 2 cards in his deck, so it's actually kind of likely that this Marrow Slicer gets the Soul Fragments, and he's just going to go ahead and shuffle in more Soul Fragments and be mana efficient, but it's kind of like what you said, finite amount of damage here. And Conley is making that push. Monsanto has one of those weapon destructions ready to go with Harrison Jones, though, and that could be huge.
Speaker Gidra. I still have not processed that this is a dual class card. I feel like we had this discussion already when we did the Invitational, and I actually haven't remembered that you are actually allowed to play Gidra in Charlotte. That's just a Druid card.
That's right. I mean, there's like other cards, like, you know, I think Hedge Clan Thug was a neutral card, but people always just assumed it was a rogue card for a long time. There's a lot of that kind of interesting dynamics in Hearthstone. Wow, Conley doesn't pick up a lot of his Soul Fragments, only just 1, which means Sociologist Militia actually has a pretty good board development here with, I think, 3 Soul Fragments?
Yes, I think it's 3 fragments, 1 real card, yeah. It might just be all 4. Well, regardless, Monsanto has that far left scheme that he's been milking the entire game, which is going to be lined up against that Sociologist, and I think quite deliberately so from Monsanto as well. He's been holding on to that final answer.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder, you know, when are you going to be playing Sociologist? When are you going to be able to play Magtheridon? Are you just ditching Magtheridon or hoping that Blade Dance can carry it against a controlled deck that's aimed at removing it? There's a lot of complexity going to this turn planning here, because if Conley makes the wrong foundational play for these last few turns, it's over. All right, Warblades. Keen Sun Fury. Oh, he's going upstairs.
Down soon? Okay. That means Monsanto will probably have to pull the trigger on the Tidal Wave this turn, although he did just pick up a second copy of Witch's Brew, which is also pretty insane here. So Monsanto can use Diligent Note Taker alongside Tidal Wave just to get an additional copy of Tidal Wave back into his hand. Actually, or is he just going with Witch's Brew? Actually, that wouldn't work, right? The spell, it would die to the spell burst triggered. So yeah, it's a Witch's Brew turn.
And
Makes
there you go.
sense.
Looks like Monsanto is going to be able to outlast pretty much anything Conley can throw at him right now, with decisive AoE, with additional healing in the form of the second Witch's Brew and Tidal Wave. It's just not enough. Conley would have to kill him for 30, basically.
Yeah, we see as the last remaining natural card, I believe, in the Soul Shard Lapidary.
Is there any possible way for Conley to get out of this?
Not
And
that
I
I'm
think that's
currently
kinda-
seeing. I think from his
think it's-
perspective, it's stick Sociologist, right? He just has to hope that there's no answer
Right.
for it. But like, we can quite clearly see that there is not 1 but 2 very clean answers for that card in Monsanto's hand.
Yeah, I was thinking that also the alternative was trying to find a way to stick Magtheridon,
Yeah, that's also fair.
which is equally unlikely
Yes.
from this perspective.
So yeah, I think Conley has smartly been holding on to that Soul Shear for multiple turns because he wants to cast it same turn as Sociologist, so at least guarantees he gets some value out of it. Yeah, it's just not going to be anywhere near to enough. Even Conley pushing the damage here, you could kind of argue with, like, I guess he's dead to Tidal Wave here anyway, but, you know, you could argue that you're allowing your opponent to heal for more by pushing the damage first, but I think you're quite willing to concede to Tidal Wave at this point.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Conley will draw more Soul Fragments. We'll have a Magtheridon. The Magtheridon gets answered, and that will do it. A little bit of a limp to the finish line here.
I mean, how does he
will
even
look
make
like-
the Magtheridon? Step number 1. I don't think he can even get there.
Blade Dance.
Sure.
I mean, that's what you gotta do, right?
It is, yeah.
Slice your power Blade Dance. Didn't even have the Lapidary to give him anything beyond that.
He has a 5 mana 5/5 left in his hand. Yeah.
Definitely
How
worth
big
at
do you
least
scheme get,
seeing.
Monsanto? I think it's big enough, right? Can you kill a Magtheridon with your Hagatha scheme? Ultimate swag points?
Sure you can.
Yup!
14. That's gonna finally do it here. Monsanto can kill Conley, and Conley is going to concede. So game number 4 goes to Monsanto, which brings us to our 5th and final game of this round. We did get confirmation the round number 3 is ready to go. So momentarily after this, we're going to go straight into that after a few minutes. But it goes down to a Demon Hunter versus a Control Warrior showdown, which I guess from Monsanto's perspective should kind of be similar in scope of how he wants to destroy the Demon Hunter with his Shaman. Which, by the way, I do want to say that was the first time we've seen Shaman get a win on broadcast for either the Masters Tour or Grandmasters in quite some time. So Monsanto pioneering, if you will, and trying to look out for the underdog.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a week of Grandmasters where basically only 2 classes were being played due to the ban format, and that was Shaman and Paladin, and Shaman still was not winning any games of Hearthstone during that week. That's how difficult that is to achieve, Dan.
It is quite the achievement. It might even make it to the Hearthies, who knows, but we'll see. Monsanto with a 3 keep, as he does like the curve that he has, and Conley, of course, needs to find that early board building momentum. Finds a Spirit Jailer on 1, which is a nice start.
Job done.
Chooses instead to Hero Power. Looks like he just wants to be mana efficient, which I can't blame him. Yep.
Making sure all of that damage is going through. There you go. Why play a 1-3 on turn 1 that's going to miss 1 damage? The answer is because then you have a 1-3 that can deal 1 damage, but you know, you can at least listen to the debate.
Debate is whether or not you believe in the heart of the cards and you'll draw a 2-drop on 2.
Yes.
It's essentially what it comes down to. Monsanto not really incentivized to play this acidic swamp moves on curve, just going to Hero Power. We've seen the way he approached the matchup from the Shaman's perspective. I anticipate to be almost a re-inspired version of exactly the same kind of line to play.
Only this time max damage on this particular turn, wants to throw out the weapons, but I do think this makes sense. It's a little bit of a diversion from him saying I want to Hero Power every turn up until this point. But in this particular matchup, again, Monsanto plays 17 weapon destructions in his lineup, 4 of them in this deck. So there's a good chance Conley's like, okay, if I draw a weapon, I'm going to play that weapon and swing it immediately, because that is the minimum chance that my opponent has any weapon destruction in his hand to be able to deal with it.
Fair enough. Ooh, Magtheridon on curve. So that way you can play the Mystic on turn number 5. I like it. So Monsanto has to see that this is coming, and he needs to have a contingency plan. He does in the form of Blade Storm.
He does, yeah.
So many choices.
I like this Magtheridon turn, though, from Conley, because it's kind of the exact opposite of what I was talking about on the previous turn, where the alternative here was to swing his current weapon and then re-equip a weapon with 2 charges on and just leave it there, which seems pretty dangerous against Monsanto's lineup. So I think Conley was kind of forced to go with this line with the Magtheridon, as well as the fact that it sets up perfectly for the Shard Shatter Mystic on the following turn.
Yeah, very much so. And the Mystic does end up going for the clear, but, you know... Oh, Conley with the Mana Feeder as well this turn, despite not having the Hero Power activating his Battle Cry. To stop the Blade Storm.
Stop the Blade Storm, yeah, I love it. Makes himself a little more... well, he makes himself vulnerable to Brawl some of the time, but he's made himself less vulnerable to Blade Storm most of the time, which I think is an equation that works out in his favor.
Right, so now how does Monsanto deal with this? This was really well crafted by Conley. Yeah, I think he's probably played up
So
against enough
many
warriors to
choices.
understand what he needs to be doing as Rogue. This is actually fairly similar to the setup that he was trying to do to stop Warrior in his Rogue versus Warrior, where he played a 3-1 in the 10-10 Van Cleave.
Mm-hmm.
No brawl to bail out Monsanto, though.
And honestly, this 12-12 does seem pretty crucial. I was talking about it in the previous game, where finding some way to stick it and Monsanto just constantly holding back at least one option to deal with it really felt like the crux of the matchup, and it seems pretty similar this time around, because if Conley can just net 12 damage that didn't start in his deck, that does go a long way in solving that finite damage problem that we've spent most of this series talking about.
I mean, Monsanto looks lost. Like, he doesn't seem like he knows exactly how he wants to deal with this. So he's just gonna play stuff, and hopefully that helps clean up enough of the board to maybe have Bladestorm make a significant impact. Conley has the ability to just kind of press in here. Skull Gul'dan is available on 6 in the outcast position. Could also end up just going for, say, Gleipbound on depth and pressing in.
See, this is really close and actually pretty interesting. Because Conley has to smell blood here, right? Like, his 12-12 has stuck, so he now has to work out what the hand looks like that's made his 12-12 stuck. 12-12 stick, sorry. And then, you know, figure out how to engineer it from there. And I kind of like him just loading up board. Because you can make a read there that if Monsanto had Brawl, he would have taken a 50-50 Brawl to try and save the game, as opposed to take 12 in that position. I really like this.
Yeah, and I like the development of the Gleipbound too, because that's also another health breakpoint. If Monsanto found a way to remove that Panthera and then go for Bladestorm, this is adding yet another layer. So with all of those reasons, it's kind of hard to convince yourself that Skull Gul'dan is the right pick. Not to mention that, like, he has even more additional damage in the hand with Marrow Slicer, which is setting up 2-turn lethal for him.
Absolutely. So Hero Power Shield Slam Bladestorm, for example, that would be an efficient clear on this turn that wasn't available on the previous one, that playing the extra full health minion then plays around.
Right.
Oh, he was so close. He was so close.
Yeah. And I mean, from Monsanto's perspective, are you still kind of forced to use Shield Slam here anyways? That's like, the Gleipbound depth isn't Magtheridon levels of threat, more of a code orange.
I think it has to be
This
Bulwark
is
time, though, right? Like, I understand he's trying to milk it for as long as possible, but he can't just take 12 again, can he? Yes, he can.
Can and will.
Who am I to tell this man what to do with his lineup, Frodan? He wants to take 12. He can damn well take 12.
He wants to take 14. Oh, wow. More damage coming in, and like Monsanto can remove this weapon all he wants, but Conley is ready to press in for the victory because Magtheridon still is unanswered. I can't remember the last time I've seen Magtheridon be able to connect 3 times.
I don't think I've ever seen it. Because, like, the requirements for that to happen, like, one of them is also your opponent has survived being hit twice by Magtheridon, which is pretty unlikely to happen in the first place.
Fair enough. Okay. Anchor, and then Bladestorm, and then...
So many choices.
Oh. Wait, no, is it Risky Skipper? Can the Anchor hold Risky Skipper, and then...
Then what? He has to anchor and Bulwark, right? Like, this is the only way he stays alive, just to tank this for a couple of turns. Like, sure, on like, plus side for Monsanto, he's milked this so hard that he's now removed all other sources of minion damage from the board, so it's just the face attack and the 12-12 that can chew through these points of durability.
Yeah.
On the negative side, he took 24. I'm not sure he's come out ahead in that exchange.
Right.
Alas, poor warlock.
Thankfully, there's not many ways to deal small amounts of damage to really make this Bulwark ineffective.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think if you're Conley, you're definitely looking to find ways to get through that Bulwark as fast as you can.
You ever been sadder to see a 12-12 attack in your life, Dan?
Demons?
I mean, I guess so. Last time I've seen that was kind of like the Van Cleave versus Ice Block days, where like Rogue couldn't really do anything, and so it felt like it was really pointless to attack even though you need to. I do like using the weapon charge as well. You do recognize there's so much weapon destruction.
Yeah. He just has to, right? There's nothing to be gained from just skipping an attack there. Like your hero will attack the opposing hero to break through this weapon. Like you just have to do it.
Okay. Armorsmith and Blade Storm gains him a lot of armor. Gives him 12 armor. No. That's not enough. Because the man, I kind of forgot about the mana feeder being in the way of stuff.
Yep. Blade Storm just does not quite get the job done. Deathwing does half the time, but even then you're only at 5. You do have the bulwark though.
I mean, Deathwing does eliminate at least Max Therodon. And I think that's what you got to go for here.
Oh, wins the
hits the
50-50.
mana feeder.
Yeah, very nice.
Big.
So that essentially gives Monsanto a whole extra turn, or would in most worlds until that Kane Sun Fury appeared in hand. The fact there wasn't that one extra attack on board means that this weapon lasts in a whole additional turn to allow Monsanto to set up for something. Suddenly there's a little window. It's a small window. It's not much of a view, but it's there. It's letting some sunlight in.
You don't pick the ones.
A ray of hope.
Indeed.
Oh, gee. Okay, so if Conley can just pop the bulwark, he's got damage from hand to end it next turn. He's got 2 Twin Slices and Eldrazi Warblades and the hero power, so that's plenty.
There's Cartoot Defender from Monsanto. Again, Conley playing so nicely around Bladestorm, though, because, like, what's the 2-card combo that beats him here in this scenario? Bladestorm to kill the Kane. And then dropping a Cartoot Defender alongside that. So having this extra 2-2 in play is just the absolute world of difference right now.
Right. The double Armorsmith Bladestorm is kind of good, though, for Monsanto to gain a bunch of life. But it's, as you said, still a little bit awkward. And Cartoon Defender even wouldn't keep him safe. Needs to find a way to deal with this Kane, but he can't. At least not from the way we see things.
No, so he can, like, double Armorsmith, Bladestorm just to kill the 2-2, get 2 procs on 2 Armorsmiths, and then armor up at the end of the turn? Yikes. I am upset.
Throwing in this ooze.
Yeah, I guess throwing in the ooze is technically more efficient, sure. So he now finds himself all the way back up at the lofty heights of 17.
So 3 plus 4 plus 4 is 11. Eldrazi Warblades is 13. Hero Power is 14. Looks like a little bit off from Conley to finish out this game. They can go ahead and consume magic.
Yeah, it's actually a really big deal. Having the consume magic available and hitting the outcast on it. Ooze comes in. It comes in on the turn precisely after the bulwark gets broken.
This ends up being a really tight one. And Conley going for a full board clear.
Oh, the potential for Sticky Finger to hit the lifesteal weapon, though, is something that you have to have in mind as well.
Yes.
Does the ooze come down? The ooze can... I guess the ooze doesn't play around that because there'd only be 1 charge left and it would get used. Never mind.
Right. I think in his mind, he saw the weapon he needed, which was the Bulwark of Azanoth, and missed that connection.
Yeah.
Ooh, Monsanto has that second Bladestorm, which clears. And
now suddenly...
Finger.
Yeah. But that Bladestorm Cartoot turn that I was talking about before is also a distinct possibility with the Kane and the Consume Magic both used.
It's true, but Sticky Finger feels so much better too because you can also not only disable the weapon but hero power and squeeze that in, and every single damage point feels like it has significant impact right now.
I mean, yes, but how much damage do you take in the face if you play Kartuk Defender? Isn't the answer always 0 from this point, more or less? I guess Sociologist can push through and then damage can go face. Gladebound can go over the top. I don't think you die if you play Kartuk Defender, do you?
So many choices.
Do you need this extra 2 health from the weapon?
It's 4 health, but I could get the hero power as well.
Okay, sure. That is true.
Well, the nice thing about Kartuk Defender as well is it also activates, or potentially activates, Bloodsworn Mercenary if, say, Conley can't deal with this.
That's very fair as well, yeah.
Oh! All right. So he drew a Soul Fragment, so I was like, oh no, the Militia got weaker, but then he drew a Spirit Jailer right after.
I grow impatient.
And so Conley, I haven't been able to be diligent about the amount of Soul Fragments, but Sociologist should be able to just deal with this pretty easily.
Yes.
Especially with the Soul Shear.
Yeah. And this was the potential I did call out, where Sociologist specifically did allow you to take a little bit of extra face damage this turn that wasn't really accounted for. But you have banked the Kartuk healing at this point as well, which could end up being super relevant as Monsanto needs to find an answer to the board. That's not an answer to the board, but it's absolutely the next best thing here. Monsanto gonna go back to 26.
Oh god. Feels like it nuked back to the beginning. Conley finds the Soul Shard Lapidary after a couple of useless Soul Fragments get drawn. Conley has 10 damage on board, 5 through this Lapidary, 6 through the Slices in his hand. Hero Power is another 1. That's 22 damage.
22, yeah. That was my count as well.
Demons.
So close. And I mean, if he does, he's also committing his entire hand, and he's super all in. Not to mention, Kargath Prime still needs to die.
Yeah, so I think just the Soul Shard Lapidary goes into the minion. Minions go face. You try and kill him next turn. Yeah, I completely agree with this line from Conley. I think this is the best balancing act. I think he knows if there was a big mass AoE, it would have been used there potentially over the Kargath Prime, since there was plenty of health left to play with if you could clear the board there anyway.
That's right, and now 15 is showing on the board. This is showing the power of Sociologist Militia because it's sticky and helps you even get that minion damage. Monsanto is dead, it looks like, because with 15 on the board and 6 from the hand, that's going to do it. And Monsanto concedes.
Wow.
Conley able to outlast a grinder of the series, and with one of his first appearances on the circuit, a very impressive performance by Conley this series, I have to say.
I have so many thoughts and so many questions and so few answers, Dan. That lineup is absurd. I don't understand it. I'm sure it does destroy Bomb Warrior, but outside of that, I'm not sure where you're going with it. Conley really impressed me, though. I actually really like the way that he played that series. That's my first real exposure to him, and I think he played very intelligently in a couple of key scenarios. From Monsanto's side, I have some questions about why 24 damage was taken in a position where you have the Bulwark in your hand. Maybe he was scared of Ooze. Maybe there was more value in setting it up later. I don't know. I'm not an experienced player with the card, but I don't understand why you'd willingly take 24 damage when you could prevent it with that card as an option. But yeah, I mean, that was a heck of a series, and we had to deal with it here once. That's what Monsanto's series are like every single time in this tournament. That's what he's done to himself with the lineup that he's built for this tournament. I don't know.
I like it. It gets conversations going. The Shaman showed up and won, so clearly there's a role that it can serve in lineups that Monsanto's onto, and the class that's the most represented, Warrior, ends up taking the double loss on broadcast. But, I think Monsanto might have also been doing this one for the fans as well as one of his quirky ideas that he usually comes up with from time to time. that's just round 2. That's in the books. When we come back, we're going to get started with round number 3 here, as we're going to go for 5 rounds today here at Hearthstone Masters Tour Montreal. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Masters Tour Montreal Online is brought to you by T-Mobile. Switch today and rank up to America's largest 5G network. T-Mobile.